Hearing will now come to order. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome everybody to this hearing of the Technology and Innovation Subcommittee. Today, we will be discussing the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or Nist, and its fiscal year 2009 budget request. The Science and Technology Committee has always been one of NIST's strongest supporters. It is one of my favorite agencies. NIST's work on standards and technology has enabled many of the products and services in our modern economy, from semiconductors to ATMs to hearing aids. Today, NIST is in a position to play a vital role in keeping our nation innovative and economically competitive. Last year, Congress passed the America Competes Act, which put NIST on a 10-year path to doubling as an investment in our innovation future. Competes included the first comprehensive authorization of NIST in 15 years. This subcommittee developed that authorization bill, which is incorporated in the Competes Act, and we believe it made NIST an important component of a balanced innovation agenda. At that time, I and other members of the committee were concerned that NIST did not have a good comprehensive plan for what its research activities would be with a doubled budget. It was not clear how NIST set its funding priorities and how it allocated resources among different technical areas. Indeed, witnesses at last year's hearing expressed similar concerns. That is why the America Competes Act included a requirement that NIST deliver a 3-year strategic plan to Congress with the budget request. This plan was to include all of NIST programs, including the NIST labs and lab construction, the Industrial Technology Services programs, and the Baldrige Award. The document that NIST delivered falls far short of this requirement. It leaves out several of NIST's most important programs, and it does not lay out a strategic plan to ensure that NIST investments are suitable for the competitive challenges of the 21st century. I am deeply concerned that NIST has still not developed a comprehensive programmatic planning document. The Competes Act clearly established congressional priorities for NIST. However, the budget request this year largely ignores Congress input. The request is 28% lower than NIST's FY09 authorization. In fact, NIST is the only science agency included in Competes whose budget request is actually lower this year than last year. Competes put the Manufacturing Extension Program, or MEP, on a 10-year path to doubling to enhance its ability to help small manufacturers modernize their operation and remain globally competitive. I'm disappointed to see that once again the administration proposes to eliminate this program. In addition, Competes created the Technology Innovation Program, TIP, to provide cost-shared grants to small, high-tech companies that are working to bring new technologies from concept to reality. TIP updated and replaced the highly successful Advanced Technology Program, and it will help reap the benefits of the federal investment in research. I am disappointed that the administration wants to eliminate this key component of a comprehensive innovation agenda. And now I'd like to recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentleman from Georgia, Dr. Gingrey, for his opening remarks.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman Wu. Thank you for convening the hearing today on the fiscal 2009 budget request for the National Institute of Standards and Technology, better known as NIST. Unfortunately, my duties with the House Armed Services Committee will pull me away from this important hearing on the most important federal agency under the jurisdiction of our subcommittee, Technology and Innovation, and therefore I'm eager to begin testimony from our esteemed panel and will keep my remarks brief. NIST is simply exceptional in the quality and impact of its scientific research, services, and partnerships. Almost every federal agency in the United States industry sector uses the standards, the measurements, and certification services that NIST labs provide. In 2007 alone, NIST provided over 42,000 calibration tests and reference materials across the country. And furthermore, 78 scientists and engineers from my home state of Georgia, along with approximately 8,000 scientists and engineers nationwide, collaborated with Nist throughout the year. Nist's work helps small and large manufacturers in our country compete in the emerging global marketplace, and the assistance Nist provides is critical to our 21st century innovative economy. Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased with the President's request of $535 million for Nist Labs, which does put Nist back on the path to doubling its budget laid out in the American Competitiveness Initiative, as you pointed out. However, it is unfortunate that the administration has sought to end federal contributions to the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program, or MEP. Last year, at this subcommittee's very first hearing, I said that I was disappointed with the President's request of only $46 million for MEP. Unfortunately, I'm even more disappointed with the current request to actually end federal participation in this very important program. Mr. Chairman, MEP helps small and medium-sized United States manufacturers optimize their operations and remain competitive in a global economy. In Georgia, the MEP program served 834 manufacturing clients in fiscal year 2007. It helped create 761 jobs across my state. In my district alone, MEP has completed 20 unique projects for companies in Northwest Georgia that will help them stay on the cutting edge of manufacturing innovation. Because of the positive impact that the MEP program has for our economy, it deserves at least the approximate $100 million Congress has provided in recent years. So I intend to work with my colleagues to see that it does receive an adequate appropriation for this fiscal year. Mr. Chairman, Nist is largely an agency that does not receive its due credit for its yeoman's work across all federal agencies. And I want to thank Dr. Turner and his team for the job that they do on a daily basis. I look forward to hearing from you on the panel. Again, apologetic that I'm going to have to run out and may hopefully get back in time to hear the rest of your testimony. And at this point, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back my time.
Thank you, Dr. Gingrey. If there are other members who wish to submit additional opening statements, your statements will be added to the record at this point. And at this point, I will briefly introduce three of our witnesses to allow Dr. Ehlers to two of the wonderful witnesses who come from the great state of Michigan. First, Dr. James Turner, who has been the acting director of Nist since September of 2007. Dr. Mary Good, who is the founding dean of the College of Engineering and Information Technology at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock and served as the Undersecretary of Technology during the first Clinton administration. And Dr. Peter Fiske is Vice President of Research and Development at PAX Scientific and Engineering Research and Product Design Firm. And I would like to yield to the gentleman from Michigan, Dr. Ehlers, to introduce final two witnesses.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you yielding. First of all, let me just say that I have a very soft spot in my heart for Nist. Years ago, when it was still NBS, in which I think it should still be, I served as a fellow at the Joint Institute for Laboratory Astrophysics in Boulder, and they then elected me a non-resident fellow, and I went back for 3 summers. A great institution. I learned a great deal. I hope I contributed something as well. But I've also served on the visiting panel for NBS for several years, and it was a good experience. In terms of introducing the two individuals from Michigan, first of all, Dr. James Serum, who, with a name like that, obviously was destined to become a scientist. He comes from Hudsonville, Michigan, which his most important product, in addition to Dr. Serum, is Hudsonville ice cream. And had I known you were here, I would have brought you a gallon of that. One time I got on the plane in Michigan to fly to California, and the person next to me was holding a steaming box on his lap. Today, they would have assumed he was a terrorist. It turned out he couldn't leave. I couldn't go back home without taking a gallon of Hudsonville ice cream back home, so he had it in dry ice just to please his wife. Next, we have Mr. Michael Coast, who is the president and CEO of the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center, Also, I believe president of the National Association of Individuals who direct that, and that's why he's representing all them here. But also the Grand Rapids, Michigan MEP program is partially under his jurisdiction. He's done a fantastic job in Michigan. I totally agree with the comments of Mr. Gingrey about the importance of that program. I also don't understand why the administration keeps zeroing it out. I finally decided that there's a little man buried in the bowels of the White House who thinks it's a bad program and zeroes it out every year, and then the Congress proceeds to fund it appropriately. I'm pleased with the MEP program, I'm pleased with the TIP program, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the liberty to expound my views on this. I think they're both excellent programs. I assume that we will once again reinstate them and fund them appropriately. Thank you for giving me the extra time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ehlers, and I not only appreciate your comments about MEP and TIP, but I will keep my eyes open for that wonderful ice cream, smoking or not on airplanes. As our witnesses know, your written statements will be taken into the record. Spoken testimony should be limited to 5 minutes, after which members of the subcommittee will have 5 minutes each to ask questions. And Dr. Turner, we will start with you.
Thank you very much, sir. Chairman Wu, Ranking Member Gingrey, Dr. Ehlers, we thank you for the opportunity to present the President's fiscal year 2009 budget request for Nist. This budget puts us back on the doubling path as envisioned in the President's American Competitiveness Initiative and as reflected in the America Competes Act that Congress enacted last year. I want to thank the Chairman and the Ranking Member and the other members of the committee for their leadership in the America Competes Act. For FY 2009, our request is $638 million, which includes $634 million for NIST core programs encompassing NIST research and facilities, and $4 million for the Hollings Manufacturing Extension Partnership. The funding level decisions for MEP as well as the TIP program were difficult choices that had to be made in tight budget times. The budget for NIST core represents a 22% increase over the FY08 appropriations for these programs. You will hear today from our VCAT, our visiting committee. I want to thank them for the time and effort that they offer that they provide in supporting NIST. Most recently, they recommended an internal nanotechnology council to coordinate our nanotechnology work. We welcome that recommendation, and as of Friday, that council now exists. The President's request focuses on high-impact research that will spur economic growth and improve our quality of life, and thereby accomplish NIST's mission to advance innovation and industrial competitiveness. The ACI and Competes Act enable NIST to continue to aggressively lay the science and technology foundation recommended by so many reports and proclamations on U.S. innovation and competitiveness. It is paramount that NIST move rapidly and wisely toward realizing the vision of being the world's leader in creating critical measurement solutions and promoting equitable standards. Well-targeted measurements and standards investments is a proven path to stimulate innovation, foster industrial competitiveness, increase economic security, and improve the quality of life of all Americans. The FY 2009 budget proposal contains a total of 17 initiatives. These initiatives were developed using a rigorous process that includes talking with industry, stakeholders, and our visiting committee. 5 of the initiatives are new for FY09. The rest were previously proposed in the FY08 budget, but to all our collective disappointment, the FY08 budget took us off the doubling track. At NIST, this has real consequences. 300 new employees and guest researchers were not hired. A number of important research projects were stopped or delayed, and maintenance of our facilities will slow down while increasing the risk of equipment and facility failures. Our experience last year makes this year's budget request much more important. We must not lose this historic moment to make the significant necessary investment in the physical sciences. Let me briefly describe our initiatives. We have grouped them into 3 areas. First, addressing urgent environmental safety and security needs, which include initiatives in nanotechnology, climate change, biometrics, earthquake hazards, and disaster resilient structures. Secondly, investing in strategic and rapidly advancing technologies, which includes initiatives in bioscience measurements, quantum computing, cybersecurity, optical light communications, hydrogen fuel, and manufacturing supply chain integration. And finally, building our science and engineering capacity and capability, which includes a proposed expansion of the JILA facility that Dr. Ehlers referred to in Boulder, and a new Boulder lab facility, an expansion of the Nist Center for Neutron Research in Gaithersburg, and an increase in our major repairs and maintenance. For 107 years, Nist research has been critical to the nation's innovation and competitiveness. The increased funding in the President's FY 2009 budget for Nist Core will directly support technological advances in broad sectors of the economy that will quite literally define the 21st century, as well as to improve the safety and quality of life for all our citizens. Again, this is a historic moment. The ACI is truly a once-in-a-generation opportunity to enable cutting-edge advances in measurement science that will ensure that the U.S. drives technological change. We look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the subcommittee throughout this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Turner. Dr. Serum, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Wu and members of the House Subcommittee, for the opportunity to testify before you today on the 2009 budget proposal for NIST. My name is James Serum, and I am testifying on behalf of VCAT, the Visiting Committee on Advanced Technology. I am president of SciTech Ventures and was recently elected as chairperson for the VCAT. I've been asked to provide feedback on the VCAT's perspective for NIST's current and future strategic investments, the 3-year programmatic plan, and the effectiveness of cross-laboratory program coordination within NIST. We believe that NIST is performing high-quality, state-of-the-art measurement and technology research. Their equipment and facilities provide capability for world-class measurements of chemical, biological, and physical parameters, and their technical staff is highly competent. The VCAT has long believed that NIST is dramatically underfunded to effectively accomplish its designated mission. We strongly support the proposed 22% increase in NIST's 2009 core budget, and we support the proposed new initiatives for nanotechnology, innovations in bioscience, cybersecurity, and optical communication and computing. We support the established priorities for information technology and the research programs in quantum computing. The U.S. is lagging in broadband capacity, and better data is needed for access to and use of high-capacity data communication capabilities. NIST can make a significant contribution in developing metrics that measure these parameters. We support the proposed additional funding for bioscience. However, the amount of NIST research dollars currently dedicated to bioscience and healthcare is minute relative to the greater than $2 trillion annual expenditure for this industrial sector. The subcommittee considers the current projects well managed, but in general we do not see an overall strategic plan to provide direction and prioritization. We encourage them to develop a comprehensive strategic plan for bioscience and healthcare in 2008. A new Center for Nanoscience and Technology, CNST, was launched at NIST during 2007 to conduct nanoscale research and to provide nanofabrication capabilities for both internal and external customers. The environmental health and safety of nanomaterials represents a major issue to this industry. CNST has established this as a priority, and they have launched a cross-laboratory program to investigate and develop measurement tools to address this issue. We caution NIST to partner appropriately with toxicology experts and organizations rather than trying to develop this application knowledge base in-house. As the facility gears up, it is necessary for CNST to develop new external industrial partnerships. We have reviewed the current CNST industrial interactions and believe that they recognize the importance of developing these external partnerships. Overall, the 3-year programmatic plan represents a comprehensive strategic plan that reflects clearly the goals of the organization, its core competencies, current research priorities, as well as an identification of future measurement needs and a discussion about how technology priorities will be established in the future. During recent years, VCAT has consistently recommended an improvement in strategic planning, particularly a strong demonstrated link between strategic plans, priority setting, and selecting and staffing projects. The 3-year plan demonstrates that their strategic planning process has significantly improved and appears to be a good foundation for better strategic dialogue between Nist staff and the VCAT. We encourage them to continue their efforts to implement effective strategic planning throughout all of their departments and laboratories. We are pleased with their proactive behavior on getting their stakeholders and the voice of the customer into their planning and prioritization process. Projects such as the U.S. measurement system has identified more than 700 measurement needs across 11 industries. We encourage Nist management to continue to evaluate and integrate these diverse lists of measurement needs into more focused programs and a visible process for establishing priorities. It is evident that Nist has become much more proactive in reaching across organizational boundaries for access to innovative ideas, technology, and application expertise. We applaud this effort and observe that it is becoming an integral part of the Nist culture. The development of new kinds of partnerships is necessary for the success in addressing new technologies. Applications expertise that does not exist within Nist should often be accessed through partnerships in the future. The Hollings Marine Laboratory in South Carolina represents an outstanding partnership with NOAA to gain applications expertise in marine biology. We believe that this type of relationship can serve as a model for future partnerships where applications expertise in particular field is needed. The VCAT 2007 annual report provides much more detail regarding our findings and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Serum. Dr. Good, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Wu and Congressman Ellers. It's always nice to see friends that you know from a long time ago. Really, it's a great opportunity to have to be here today and to say a few words about Nist. I have turned in my report, and I won't read that, but I will simply summarize the 3 pieces of it that I wanted to make, and I'll do that very quickly. First of all of you already have talked about the quality and the significance of Nist. I think that goes without saying. I don't think we even have to defend that anymore. I think everybody essentially agrees with us on that. And if you have to talk about the quality, we can talk about their Nobel Prize winners and some of the other things that go with Nist these days. And certainly one point I would like to make, and that is that the facility in Colorado absolutely is long overdue. Congressman Ellers knows we've been trying to get that facility for I have forgotten how long ago. Actually, very high quality work gets done there, and they really need a first-class facility to do it in. So I was very pleased to see that as part of the budget. But the only thing I would say with respect to how good Nist is if you want to really understand that, you go to places where they don't have a Nist. I was invited down to South Africa to review their National Bureau of Standards about 7 or 8 years ago. And they were just then, as you know, coming out of the apartheid era and trying to really get everything going. And they wanted people to come in. They had an international committee come to review it and to tell them what they were doing right and how to improve things. And it was really a very eye-opening experience, because things that we in this country absolutely take for granted and have been doing for 100 years, they were trying to get installed. So if you really want to understand where we are, you can go someplace where they're still now trying to do what really Nist did in many ways at the turn of the century. These people were still trying to get good standards for gasoline pumps in the countryside. Because people were being cheated in terms of the standards that they were using to measure it, if you like. So there's just no question about the quality, and I won't spend very much more time on that. It clearly is the metrology laboratory, the best in the world, and without it, our enterprise would not work nearly as well as it does. The second issue that I'd like to speak to, I also was very disappointed with the lack of any funding for MEP and for the Technology Initiation Program. And I'd like to put a little different spin on why I think those are so very important, in addition to the ones that have already been stated. First of all, it is very true that MEP has been extraordinarily valuable to the states and to their manufacturing industries, and particularly to the moderate, to the medium and small manufacturers. They have been extraordinarily important in keeping those people in the forefront of being innovative. But today, Nist is being asked to look at new technologies in nanotechnology, in the health sciences. They're looking also at areas in biotechnology, all of these cutting-edge technologies that are there. They're being asked to do the standards, and they're being asked to look at the manufacturing facilities that go with those. So it's my opinion that the MEP is the vehicle for getting Nist to understand what is important in those small companies out there today. Because I was on the National Review Panel for the National Initiative for Nanotechnology, and there are now thousands of small companies out there who are making nanoproducts. They have two major problems. One is they don't understand the manufacturing technologies very well. They don't have standards in place. And secondly, they don't know very much about the health effects at all. We've not done very much about that yet. So if you could hook these state centers and have the NIST people who are working on those new cutting-edge technologies and have them mesh with the state centers and have those state centers out there helping these small startup companies, everybody would win. Because NIST would begin to understand exactly what those companies need and how to use it. They could better prioritize what they're doing. And secondly, certainly the companies should win. So this is kind of a win-win situation that seems to me goes without saying, is really very necessary. So I would argue that the MEP program is as important for NIST as it is for the small manufacturers if they're going to really be at the cutting edge in the coming years. I can make the same argument about TIP. If you pick the right ones, and NIST has shown through the stewardship of ATP that they can run a good program. They know how to do that. They've done it quite well. So if they pick the right small businesses to partner with, this is also one of the ways to really understand what small startups and small businesses need so you can get your hands dirty. And one of the best ways for technology transfer, as everybody knows, is to get your hands dirty and be a part of the transfer. So I would argue that the omission of these two programs is a real detriment to NIST, never mind to the detriment of the manufacturing sector out there, as well as these small businesses, if you like. The second thing has to do about the strategic plan, and I do agree with the Oversight Committee with respect to the strategic plan. It's an excellent plan in the sense that it describes what the laboratories are doing in a very good way. But it doesn't really have much to do with the strategic plan over time. I would like to see NIST to actually do a strategic plan which drives what they do rather than having just the budget numbers drive what they do. I know that's asking a lot, and I understand believe me, I understand the political issues very well. But if I come in here from NIST with a real strategic plan, I think you fellows in this committee and other parts of the Congress would listen to that and would move to the direction that makes sense. So I would like to see them put together a plan over the next 3 or 4 years which will point out where they're going and why they're going there, and what portion of that what is it that they provide, and how do they have to actually have interactions with the rest of the enterprise to make that work appropriately. So I agree that the plan is excellent with respect to what it says about what they're doing today, but I don't find it to be much in the way of a strategic plan looking forward. And so I think that would have to go back and sort of redo that. Also, I didn't see any real mention of the Baldrige the National Quality Award either, and I think that was a big oversight. That really ought to be part of that strategic plan, it seems to be, because that's one of those places where we can really make some difference, and I think it's made a lot of difference in the past. And I haven't seen much publicity with respect to the Baldrige Award lately, and I would really like to see that take a little bit more front and center and see that they have properly thought that one through. And then, of course, the last thing is just to say that if you look at NIST as a whole, It really is one of those laboratories and one of those activities in the United States that without it and without it functioning really at a high level, our competitive position is just not going to be possible, because it really does have a lot to do with the competitive position that we will have going forward. So I'll be happy to answer questions, Mr. Chairman, but thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Good. Dr. Fiske, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairman Wu, committee members, for the opportunity to speak today. 7 years ago, I committed an unthinkable act. I left a comfortable and reasonably well-paid job at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and I set off to create a new business. It was oriented around a novel optical manufacturing technology called reactive atom plasma processing. The technology was developed at the lab, but my co-founder, Jeffrey Carr, could not find any support within the laboratory. In fact, when I met him, the prototype was sitting under a tarp outside a loading dock in one of the buildings. Taking a new technology from the benchtop to demonstrated commercial viability is an enormous undertaking. It's easy to demonstrate that a new technology works at some rudimentary level in the laboratory, but it takes a tremendous amount of engineering, testing, and market analysis to make a new technology work reliably, economically, and fit within the needs of the marketplace. This journey is often referred to as crossing the valley of death, and it is absolutely critical process for the U.S. economy and for economic competitiveness overall. So, having been through the valley of death, I'd like to share with you some observations about how this process of technology commercialization really works, and how federal policy can help, and specifically orient my comments around TIP and its previous incarnation, ATP. I'd also like to add that I've spoken with many entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, and my comments are largely echoed by all of them. No matter what anybody's politics, nearly everybody believes that technology innovation is a key factor in U.S. economic growth. Our ability to take scientific discoveries from the laboratory and turn them into productivity-enhancing technologies that rapidly proliferate in the national and international market is a key strength of the U.S. economy. Small technology businesses play a particularly important role in this. They and the entrepreneurs who found them take the risks on the new technologies because it is the only way that these small companies can get traction in the marketplace. So while we'd all like to believe that the U.S. is the best in the world at fostering this sort of entrepreneurship, I have to impress upon you how difficult the process actually is. How vital such tools as ATP and TIP are to entrepreneurs such as myself. Contrary to popular belief in Washington, venture capital does not fund a lot of early-stage technologies at the early stages of commercialization. Venture capital shies away from these sorts of investments because of the high degree of uncertainty and the long and uncertain pathway that technology has to travel. Venture capital only focuses on funding opportunities that are less than 5 years away from profitability and that have the potential for enormous equity appreciation and that fall within a narrow range of markets. Many new technologies do not fit this model, and most, like my company, did not receive venture funding. Technology with enormous potential to help the U.S. economy in fields such as manufacturing and transportation do not make attractive investments at their early stage for venture capitalists. This is not to say that venture capital is not vital or does not play a valuable role, but not at these early stages of technology development and commercialization. Any venture capitalist would tell you this. Ironically, the most important venture capitalist in the United States is named Uncle Sam. The federal government supports cutting-edge technology development in small businesses through a range of programs, such as SBIR, cooperative research and development agreements, and other contract mechanisms. In my years building wrapped industries, my companies benefited from many of these programs, and all of them were helpful in keeping us alive as we march through the valley of death. But out of all these programs, ATP stands out as particularly effective. Our company won an ATP award in 2003, and while it was far from the largest R&D contract we received, it was by far the most potent. ATP and TIP are unique in several respects. First, these programs focus on technologies with the greatest potential for the U.S. economy. In contrast, programs like SBIR focus on topics and technologies that are of interest to the agencies. And those topics tend to be very narrow and sometimes with limited commercial application. Second, ATP grants support early-stage technology commercialization for several years. SBIR Phase 1 contracts last as little as 6 months, and there's almost always a break in funding between Phase 1 and Phase 2. It's not enough time, really, to travel the valley of death. Third, ATP couples financial support with business development and advice and expertise. We were paired with an extremely helpful business analyst from Nist who helped us identify several key potential customers and new applications. Lastly, the ATP program is efficient and well run. I'll speak as a customer. Despite a highly competitive and rigorous review process, they take only a few months to render opinions on projects and take even less time to get under contract. If you don't do that, if you let those processes linger, technology proceeds at a snail's pace. ATP was so valuable to my company and to many others because it was well aligned to the needs of small business. ATP encouraged and facilitated collaboration with end customers rather than simply tolerating it. In a nutshell, a focus on high-risk, high-reward technologies, multi-year funding, business advice, and an efficient program management made ATP extremely effective for helping small technology businesses such as mine. TIP appears to carry on these principles, but without much funding, it doesn't do us entrepreneurs any good. I don't mean these comments to be interpreted as a criticism of SBIR or any of these other funding mechanisms. We entrepreneurs are grateful for all the help we can get in building our companies. But the argument that ATP or TIP is somehow redundant or unnecessary is simply incorrect. In my opinion, it is the best program the federal government has that supports technology commercialization. I would not have been able to do what I did without the ATP. And had there been no ATP or TIP, I would have been a lot less inclined to quit my job at Lawrence Livermore Lab and try. Thank you, and I'll be happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fiske. Mr. Coast.
Chairman Wu, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear here today. I am Mike Coast, president of the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center, the Michigan's affiliate of the National Manufacturing Extension Partnership. I'm also the current chairman of the board of the American Small Manufacturers Coalition, the trade association of the 59 MEP centers. Congressman Ehlers is already well aware of our work as he represents the district that is home to our West Michigan office, the Right Place program, and all the good work that they do over there with the manufacturers from the west side of the state. I testify today about the dire situation facing small and mid-sized manufacturers and about how the President's proposed elimination of federal funding for MEP would affect them. There are more than 30,000 fewer small and mid-sized manufacturing plants in the U.S. today than there were a decade ago. In Michigan, there were 16,000 such facilities in 1998. Today, there are barely 13,000. MEP centers have proven over the past decade or more that they can help these smaller manufacturers succeed despite this challenging landscape. In a typical recent year, MEP clients credit their services with improving productivity in 8 of every 10 cases, with cost savings totaling more than $1.1 billion, helping companies serve to add or retain nearly $6.8 billion in sales and 52,000 jobs, inducing those companies to help make more than $1.6 billion in additional investments. In Michigan, my center's clients credit it with more than $100 million in new and retained sales, 956 jobs, $18 million in cost savings, and more than $30 million in investment. As their traditional customers globalize, small manufacturers have found that they need to do more than improve quality and reduce costs to remain competitive. The MEP network has responded by developing or partnering to acquire new services that help them prospect for new customers, evaluate new markets and product concepts, and improve the way they develop and launch new products. Indeed, MEP's new catchword is 2020, expressing that many smaller manufacturers need not just 20% lower costs, but also a 20% top-line growth. At the Michigan MEP Center, services related to new customers, new markets, and new products have grown from almost nothing to about 15 to 20% of our total service portfolio. Congress recognized the effectiveness of the MEP program last year when it passed the America Competes Act. The legislation foresaw the need not only to maintain, but to grow MEP. Under the Act, MEP's federal funding would rise from its recent $104 to $106 million annual level to $122 million for fiscal year 2009, with further increases in 2010 and 2011. Despite MEP's track record of an impact and efficiency and ignoring the will of Congress, the President now proposes the virtual elimination of federal funding for MEP. One can debate what the precise effect of this would be, but the main outcomes are beyond dispute. Many centers would close. Most that do not would shrink significantly, partly because many of the states that support the centers is explicitly in the form of matching funds. Some have argued that smaller manufacturers could go out and buy the services similar to those offered by MEP centers from the private sector consulting firms. But history shows us that without some public funding to offset the cost of outreach and sales, consultants shy away from all but the best heeled of these small companies. And that's only logical. Without public funds, my center and most other centers would have no choice but to focus on larger manufacturers. With your help, however, the nation can avoid this sharp reduction in services to smaller manufacturers by turning back the President's proposal and returning it to the support levels authorized by the America Competes Act. The Congress can help save MEP and help it grow. MEP is the country's only national program created specifically to help the U.S. small manufacturing base and preserve its nearly 10 million good jobs. At this moment of grave risk to the manufacturers and the rest of the economy, MEP brings otherwise unavailable technical expertise to tens of thousands of struggling U.S. companies. In closing, I urge you on behalf of my center, 58 other centers of the MEP network, and nearly 340,000 small and medium-sized manufacturers across the nation to act to restore full funding to MEP. For you, on the subcommittee, I've enclosed one success story for each member of the subcommittee from their district or state. And also from Michigan, you'll notice that there's a list of companies there from Michigan of the 440 companies in the last couple of years that we have worked with from the MEP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coast. And now comes the time for questions. Members will be permitted 5 minutes each to ask questions, and the chair recognizes himself first. In the interest of saving some time, before I ask questions about MEP and TIP, Dr. Turner, I just want to say very clearly that the 3-year planning document which we have received is not what we had in mind when Congress passed the requirement last year. And while the document speaks sometimes in consultants' language about general values, about the need for outreach, all of which is commendable, it does not label out what research areas NIST should participate in, how those research areas make us a more competitive economy, and perhaps most importantly, how we get from where we are to where we want to go in those identified research areas, agreement about what those research are. And I hope that this subcommittee, the committee as a whole, at both the member and the staff level, can work with you and your staff to come up with focused 3-year plans in the future. I think that that is the only way that we can justify this funding for the long haul. We simply have to have that statutorily required strategic planning. Now, on MEP and TIP, we heard from Coast, we heard eloquently from Dr. Fiske about how TIP helped march him and his company over the valley, through the valley of death, and from Dr. Good about how MEP and TIP can be good not only for the purported beneficiary, but also for NIST as an organization to be more attuned to what our economy needs. These programs, MEP and TIP, are supported, as you heard here today, by both Republicans and Democrats. We have sought to avoid this seesaw battle where the funding goes up and down and up and down, and things become undependable from a user perspective. Dr. Turner, you have only been in place since September. Let me just give you an opportunity to defend as best you can, to lay out the rationale that NIST or the administration may have for zeroing out TIP and, in effect, zeroing out MEP, permitting close-down costs only?
Yes, sir. Let me first say, with regard to the three-year plan, we welcome the opportunity to work with you and your staff to make it the kind of document that you would find useful. That's we would like to go ahead and do that. But now, with respect to MEP and TIP, let me just say, first of all, one of the things that I did, first few months I was at Nist, was to visit an MEP center in Colorado and to meet with some clients. And I was extremely impressed. And so, again, I believe it's a good program. I had, in conjunction with the VCAT meeting that took place this past December in South Carolina, I had, insisted on setting aside some time to visit the South Carolina Center and, again, meet with the clients down there. Unfortunately, there was a medical emergency involving my son and his family that caused him to be medevaced out of Cairo back to the United States. That prevented me from going to that meeting. But my deputy did follow up and visited the South Carolina Center and met with some of their clients. And similar to my experience in Colorado, he came back very impressed with the work that was being done.
So it'd be fair to say that both you and your staff and members of the agency are supportive of MEP.
Well, let me just say, it's not a question. We all agree that MEP is a good program, but for us, it came down to a matter of priorities and limited resources. And for us, our highest priority is to get our core programs back up to the doubling curve, and we try to do that.
But this Congress set priorities for you and put those programs on a doubling curve along with MEP and
Well, again, we were,
with all due respect,
for us, it was the combination of the American Competitiveness Initiative and the American Competes Act, and again, we for us the priority was those core programs which affect broad industrial sectors as well as creating new industries, and so that was our priority. And we had to make some difficult choices. This was not an easy call to make, and so it was a difficult choice to make. Regarding TIP, first of all, we fully intend to run a successful TIP competition using the 08 appropriation. The rule that will establish the governance of TIP is now out for public comment. We're prepared to move forward with it, and as you've heard, we intend to apply the same standard of excellence to the TIP program as we did to ATP as far as our ability to carry those programs out. And so we look forward to that. Again, with TIP as well as MEP, it came down to a situation of priorities, trying to get back our core programs back up to the doubling curve, and in a situation where the resources we at our disposal were limited. And so we had to make those tough calls. And so again, I want to, so the point I want to make is we agree that MEP is a good program, and with regard to TIP, we are going to carry out a successful 08 competition.
Thank you very much. My 5 minutes has expired. We have a vote on, so I want to turn to Dr. Ehlers, but let me just reiterate, with all due respect, sir, those priorities were set in statute by the enabling legislation last year, and clearly like the agency law as enacted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Good, you served in positions related to Nist or directly in Nist for some time. You talked very strongly about the need for a good strategic planning process. I'd be interested in a little more detail from you. What would you be looking for? How would you proceed with it? Nist is such a diverse organization that it ranges from the esoteric research, which, frankly, in my experience, is left best outside strategic planning, because you're always looking for that spark of genius, which doesn't fit in the strategic planning charts. But it ranges from that all the way to things like TIP and MEP and other programs. Could you describe for me what you have in mind when you talk about strategic planning
I can say a few words about that. I don't disagree with you with respect to the percentage of really what I would call blue sky kinds of research they do. To include that or try to include that in a forward-looking mode in a strategic plan is very difficult to do, and if you do it too tightly, you end up not getting very much really new stuff. The industry over time has found that out. But what I was really referring to is the fact that it seems to me that NIST does need, though, there are so many of these new, what I call emerging technologies today, where they're in the process of now beginning to set standards for those, and their metrology lab, particularly the micro metrology lab, allows them to set standards in areas that are truly very new. And so the question is, which ones of those do they want to try to develop first? Where is the biggest need? And how do you go about finding out, or how do you try to at least prioritize where those needs are going to be? And so I would not disagree with you with respect to the fundamental research that's done in NIST, but I would suggest that they need a strategic plan, though, in all of those activities that are what I call technology assistance programs, and MEP and TIP fit that, as does really the standards development in these emerging technologies, because you cannot do all of them. You'll never have enough money to do them all at the same time. So you need some prioritization for those, and you need some mechanism up front which tells you which ones are not going to, how do you figure out which ones don't work and which ones of them are really important, and how do we stay ahead of the competition? In other words, we need some view, for example, where is the metrology and nanotechnology transition in the rest of the world, and how do we compete, and how does NIST stand up against that? And I would think a strategic plan would have those sorts of issues included in it.
Thank you. And I want to make it clear I wasn't questioning the need for it. I was just curious what, from your perspective,
Exactly.
you would see. The just on getting back to MEP for just a moment before we have to go off and vote. It's always struck me, this nation grew strong over the years, particularly in agriculture, which was the first industry that this nation had, and was one of the most important until just a few years ago, and it's still extremely important. The government, including the Congress, recognized that many years ago. We established the land-grant universities, which were designed to do research in agriculture. They set up the Cooperative Extension Services, which is a combination of the federal and state. And everyone thinks it's a wonderful system, and we put about $400 million a year into the Cooperative Extension Service. Now, it's always seemed very strange to me that since back then agriculture was 80% of the employment in the country, now it's less than 2% because of the modernization. And we're still spending $400 million a year on Cooperative Extension Service. Whereas at the same time, manufacturing is now roughly 14% of the employment in the country, and we have trouble getting $100 million for an extension program. Now, there's something wrong with this picture, isn't there? And I think we just have to recognize that agriculture grew strong because of assistance from the federal government. Manufacturing has been strong without government assistance. Now I think we're at the point where it needs some, and MEP, I think, and TIP are very good programs with a huge payback to the government in terms of taxes, general economic health, and so forth. So you can tell I'm the son of a preacher. I have to get that message across, and I preach it all the time. But I just want to make my point clear on that. I think this country has made a bad mistake on those issues, and we should carry the ball forward on them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ehlers. Ms. Richardson. Returning to other subjects under NIST, Dr. Turner, I have heard concerns both within the federal government and in the private sector about the status of the cybersecurity initiatives at NIST and setting standards for cybersecurity. And I wanted to ask you and ask other members of the panel to comment, if you would, on where we are in developing cybersecurity standards and whether we're making adequate progress for where we ought to be.
Well, sir, one of our initiatives is a cybersecurity standard, a cybersecurity initiative that we're working with NSA and other groups, the FBI and other groups on that. It's to provide it's basically to provide defense in depth in protecting computer assets. It's looking at what goes out for for cybersecurity keys, but also looking at other measures that can take that can move forward and layers of protection that we can have. And so this is something that we're very serious about. We're also serious. The quantum computing initiative also feeds into that, because not only will that revolutionize the way computing is done, but also it provides a huge increase in the level of security that can be provided for computing and making sure that your messages are easily accessible to those who have authorization to them, but extremely difficult for an adversary to tap into. So we're moving forward on both of those areas. Cybersecurity also is an extremely important area for us because, again, the way that our nation now relies on the network and moving things back and forth, using the electronics that we have available, we need to make sure that this is being done. Also, I'd like to point out that we are doing other things to help facilitate electronic commerce, and so which highlights to us even more the need for a secure network.
Well, if there are no other comments but by other panelists, we are drawing down to about the last 2.5 minutes before this voting clock expires on the House floor. And let me just flag for submission by staff and for response concerns about two other general areas. And one is whether there has been sufficient investment in biomaterials, because there is discussion that sufficient reference materials for biologics would be of great assistance to developing technologies and industries. And the other is whether there is sufficient oversight over the tremendous investment that is going on in nanotechnology. Now, nanotechnology is a very appropriate thing to be investing in. However, I am told that about 20% of Nist's research budget is currently being invested in nanotechnology, and I want to make very sure that those investments are made with some coordination and that it is a bottoms-up effort to support various things going on in our economy and not a response to a top-down things ought to fit in nanotechnology, so whatever it is you're doing, let's fit it under the nanotech rubric. My apologies to the panel for sort of the interruptions that we have had today, but thank you all very much for appearing this afternoon. Further statements will can be submitted into the record for the next 5 days, and I thank everyone for appearing. This hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
Good trip back to Philadelphia.
Hey, thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
By the way, we do a significant amount of out consortia.
Emerging areas. We in the state. And this kind of effort.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Sure. Thank you. I understand.